Good morning, my name is Ivana Socadras.
My name is Pablo Cabrera.
My name is Glenn Knox.
My name is Grace Sigler.
And my name is Mariana Tosta, and today we will be analyzing the question, to what extent will the effects of climate change impact the Florida Keys over the next 40 years? Looking through our research, we have concluded that climate change will negatively impact the Florida Keys over the next 40 years with detrimental effects such as increased tidal floodings, sea level rise, the destruction of the Keys' unique coastal and marine ecosystems, rising ocean acidity, changes in storm patterns, the decrease in tourism, and the displacement of people and native species from the area. But what can be done to solve this issue? Well, we have concluded that focusing on adaptation to climate change and also focusing on preparing the Keys to handle these issues, such as by raising roads and reducing the emission of greenhouse gases, would be the best possible solution. And that by focusing on both taking steps to prepare and solve this issue, we can ensure that the effects suffered by the Florida Keys will be minimized as much as possible. In order to understand this issue and its solution, we must first ask ourselves, what is climate change? So climate change is a rise in the Earth's average temperature over time. And the main cause of this issue is the greenhouse effect. As shown in this image by the University of Illinois, you can see that the natural greenhouse effect is not inherently harmful to the Earth. In fact, what happens is solar radiation enters the Earth's atmosphere and is re-radiated back into space, with some of it remaining on the atmosphere in order to heat up the Earth. But this is helpful to our Earth, but this effect is intensified by human activity, such as producing more greenhouse gases, CO2 and CH4. So what happens with intensified human activity is that the radiated heat gets trapped in the Earth's atmosphere by these greenhouse gases, causing the Earth to overheat, and the temperature to rise. And this temperature rise can have detrimental effects on our planet.
As you can see by this chart, a leading contributor to greenhouse gases is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is created by the production and emitting of fossil fuels such as gasoline, oil, and natural gas. Climate change also has a detrimental effect on human health because the water will heat up, allowing the perfect environment for diseases to grow, along with pollution because of the dryness, lack of food because of the poor quality of the water, along with storms because of the change in pH levels and smaller east coast. Climate change also has an effect on the corals because of the pH level that will alter the ocean currents, change precipitation, storm patterns, sea levels, and warming the ocean. Corals have a detrimental effect on the ocean's health, which affects our atmosphere through the process of evaporation.
Let's look at what the Florida Keys look like right now. This is a chart showing the total economic damage per county in the U.S., with the red being the most. As you can see, Florida generally averages the most economic damage out of the country because of its chaotic climate. Because of this flooding seen in these pictures, the Keys are already having to adapt to climate change and take preventative measures such as raising the roads. The rising tides are creating a lot of chaos because it's taking less rain to create more and more amounts of flooding. This graph shows that high tide flooding areas both now and in 2045. Light blue is what is currently high tide flooding areas, and the dark blue is what the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers predicts will be high tide flooding zones in 2045. As you can see, a large portion of just Key West alone is in danger. This obviously has a big chance to impact the tourism industry in the Keys, because who would want to visit a place where flooding makes transportation and accessibility very difficult? Small restaurants, local gift shops, and attractions like scuba diving, snorkeling, and that southernmost point is what the Keys thrive off of. This tourism drives their culture, economy, and other aspects of their life. If flooding and storms continue to damage businesses and attractions, then the tourism industry could be severely declined, which would have very bad consequences.
A big cause of climate change are fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are fuels formed by natural processes. Examples would be coal, oil, and natural gases. The replacement for this would be renewable energy. Renewable energy is that collected of renewable resources from sunlight, waves, tides, and wind. Examples of renewable energy would be wind energy, solar energy, hydropower, and geothermal energy. All energy sources have some impact on our environment. Fossil fuels do substantially more damage than renewable energy by most measures, including air and water pollution, water use, land use, damage to public health, wildlife and habitat loss, and global warming emissions. Solar and wind energy are exceedingly cheap to operate, with their fuel basically being free and maintenance being minimal. So the bulk of the expense comes from building the technology. American consumers and businesses are already roughly spending $700 billion to $1 trillion a year on coal, oil, and natural gases, though by 2020, renewable energy will be cheaper than fossil fuels. Though the Florida Keys will not contain the space nor budget to create such technology in its area. But a way of replacing fossil fuels is by re-signing the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement builds upon the convention and for the first time brings all nations together to the common cause of combating climate change. Former President Barack Obama signed this agreement back in 2016, but current President Donald Trump backed us out of it. Though the Florida Keys have been severely affected by climate change, the most that can be done right now is adjust and adapt to the current situation.
As Pablo just mentioned, stopping the effects of climate change in the Florida Keys would be an unreliable solution. This is why our best solution would be to adapt to the changes. As you can see here, this shows the countries who have done the most to adapt to climate change. As you can see, the United States have done little to nothing to help. This includes the Florida government. This needs to change, and this is how. First things first, we could start by raising the road level in the Florida Keys. Doing this could help adapt to the problem of sea level rise we are having. This only shows how parts of Miami have already started raising their roads. Doing this to the Keys as well could minimize or even prevent floodings and the destruction caused by them. To adapt, citizens of the Keys and everywhere else could also try to minimize or reduce emission by 30 to 50% by the year 2050. To do this, we can reduce commercial travel, reduce electricity usage, eat better for the environment, reduce, reuse, and recycle, plant trees, conserve water, and anything else that could reduce our carbon footprint. But as great as adapting to climate change is, the cost to do such thing could cost millions, if not billions. So as you can see to the chart on your right, not many people will be motivated to change their diet, let alone their entire lifestyle for the Keys. But a report by the German Institute of Economic Research and WACS shows that the cost of damage will be twice as much if we don't take any action. Plus, with the money we get from tourism in the Keys, Miami, and Orlando, and the help the Florida government gives us, money shouldn't be a big issue. And obviously there will always be people that are not willing to change their lifestyle in order to save the Keys. But according to a global attitude survey, 78% support limiting greenhouse emission, and 67% agree that people will have to make life-changing decisions in order to accomplish this. So this goes to show that there will always be people willing to help, and much more if we get the word out there about the Florida Keys and all over the world. What questions may you have?
All right, here we go. Question time. We'll start over here with Glenn. Describe how the content of your team presentation was changed as a result of your group discussion.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I can. Describe how the content of your team presentation changed based on your conversations.
Well, initially, specifically, Pablo and I, our paper is more focused on how we should stop climate change and what we can do to prevent it. But after listening to Ivana's perspective and what she talked about in her paper about how there's always going to be people who don't want to change, and we're never going to be able to force people to help contribute to fixing climate change, so we decided to rather adapt to the effects rather than stop climate change.
Okay. Ready? Okay. Reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem?
I'd say that Ivana's futuristic lens had the greatest impact on my view, because mostly I was focused on an environmental perspective. So my solution would have been more focused on protecting the environment and doing green infrastructure. But Ivana's view on focusing on adapting to climate change and not stopping it, and also getting people to change your lifestyle a little, at least a little, in order to fix the problems in the Keys is what influenced me the most.
All right, thank you. Ivana, in what way did you improve your ability to work with the group as a result of this project?
Well, at first I was very uncomfortable with my group, but after working and also Mariana taught me how to like do my script and like help me memorize and all this stuff, and I just felt more comfortable with our presentation and working with my people.
Okay. Pablo, what is the strongest counter argument to your solution that you identified?
Well, the strongest counter argument that we came up with was the fact that there wouldn't be any money, though that counter argument was then, you know, there was a rebuttal with the fact that tourism and other things could bring back money for Florida, so then we could better and prevent climate change.
Okay. And Grace, describe an argument from one of their reports that made you think differently about your overall solution.
Well, Mariana's paper about the environment changed my perspective politically because it showed me more of what we can do as a government and as a nation, and focusing on Florida, what we can do and what limits we have to consider before putting in laws.
Guess we're done. Breathe.